around where you would locate your dream medical practice. But how much of that idea is based on instinct versus clear, factual data? There's a broad range of factors that should influence such a big decision, so I've decided to investigate what these factors are. Julian Muldoon will be our guide. With extensive experience in property advisory to healthcare businesses, he's perfectly positioned to assist.
Let's come inside and grab a seat. We can talk about this particular site and what makes it so good.
Fantastic. So here we are. Tell me about this location, what's happening here, and how long is it until this place is brought to life?
Well, this particular business is going to be a general practice with a specialisation in cosmetics. So one of the reasons this particular area works so well is we're in South Yarra in Melbourne, and it's a bit of a prestige suburb. And the target market being a high net worth individual and older established wealth works really well in this particular location. There is a bit of competition in the area, but it's actually good because it creates a bit of a gravitation point for these types of services.
On that issue of competition, sometimes people think that could actually be a good thing, sometimes people think it's bad. Can you talk me through the consideration of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really depends on the business use and what kind of services they're looking to bring to the area. So for example, something like a general dentistry or just a true primary health type operation without a real specific business niche might find it really challenging if they're surrounded by some really similar services. But if you're surrounded by some ancillary providers and referral partners, and it's a place where you can offer something different in the marketplace, and I think it can be really helpful to be around other medical businesses. But if they're doing exactly what you do and you don't have a patient following or referral partners in the area, then it can be quite challenging.
What are other key considerations that need to be on your mind when you're selecting a location?
So I'd say it really does start with the game plan and the strategy and knowing what you're offering and what the vision is for the business. And then naturally it comes down to then zoning considerations. Like you don't want to be buying a site or leasing a site that isn't going to be permitted for you to operate in that area. Patient accessibility, and I guess the patient experience is always at the forefront of any doctor's mind if they're looking to set up. And then naturally that real consideration around whether they buy a property or they lease a property.
Now, in recent years, data must have changed so much in terms of quality and accuracy. How do potential private practitioners react when you put expert data in front of them?
I think it has to be a core part of everyone's plan, and there's some amazing tools out there. There's programs like one called Gap Maps, where you can look at all the business locations and new medical permits in different areas, so you can actually see what kind of competition might be in the pipeline as well as who's there at the moment. And you can map out where all your referral partners might be. So there's some pretty special tools out there as well. So I think rushing to the exciting property piece before doing the homework can be quite risky when you've got such great tools at your disposal.
Now, when it comes to different property options, there's a lot to consider. There's converted houses, there's retail space, shopping centres, offices. What should we be thinking about?
There's really strengths and considerations with all the options. I think once the doctor's identified the location they want to be in, then you can work out what options are affordable and positioned in the right location for them to actually pursue one of those options. So for example, houses can be great, especially the old traditional more character homes that have got wide hallways and large rooms that convert really well to consult rooms. And they're larger blocks generally on the main roads, which means there's plenty of car parking space at the rear. With a residential property conversion, the challenge can be that the zoning doesn't allow for expansion. And if they want to add rooms and add different services or more doctors, sometimes that's not allowed. And in the commercial space, that's when you've got the options of retail like this, which is in a larger strata development. And some of the challenges there can be permitted use within the owner's corporation. Also, a lot of the developers don't like to sell them, so generally it's only a lease option. But I'd always say it's worth asking the question. Probably the challenges with retail can be you can't pick your neighbours, so you could have some people next door or across the road that you don't feel really support the brand. And I'd say in the commercial office space, a lot of times we find doctors don't want to be in an office building that's just traditional office that isn't supported by other medical services, or it could just be difficult to find. And the last thing they want is the patient experience to be a tricky one in getting to the location, then tricky to get a park, and then tricky to get into the building as well. And then everyone's 10 minutes late and complaining. So
we can't have that.
No, definitely not. Doesn't work for anyone.
Fantastic advice. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Great to meet you. Thanks.
Beyond location, I often wonder how the aesthetics of a medical practice influence patient experiences. Do colour, lighting and floor coverings really affect patient feelings and comfort? And how do you successfully balance functionality and style? One Melbourne dermatologist, Dr Ryan De Cruz, has created a shining example of a practice that looks and functions beautifully. So I'm heading to his clinic to see how he's crafted his patient experience through thoughtful interior design and fit out. Oh, great
Hi.
to see you. What a beautiful place.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you. I love this wood. I just love this. Was this all your design?
No, actually, I cannot take credit for this. This is all the designers.
Ryan, it is such a pleasure to be here. This is an amazing place. Tell me about how you designed this and how you pulled it off.
Thank you so much. We're absolutely thrilled with the final outcome. This was really about 3 to 4 years of planning, conceptualization, discussions, visiting other practices and learning from mentors. But ultimately, I think the main thing I wanted to do was come up with a building that reflected who I was. So I really wanted a practice that was welcoming, one that was light-filled, which is so important to what I do, and one that made patients feel very welcome and very secure.
Now, can we back up a minute there? Because clearly you've got a lot of expertise and interest in interior design and style. What would you recommend for someone who perhaps hasn't got that expertise or interest, because maybe they might need a bit more advice and guidance?
Yeah, well, it's actually funny you should say that, because the truth is I don't. I
don't believe
No, I haven't even built a cubby house and I've got 4 children, so I have absolutely no expertise. But I think the first piece of advice is if you don't have expertise or you're nervous about it, is get good advice and speak to a lot of people and eventually find your own voice and your own style, I guess.
And how has it been for you? How do you feel working in a place like this? How do your colleagues, other health professionals feel?
I come to work every day and I feel a sense of calm. I feel a real sense of joy. And I know that I can see that in my employees' faces as well. I have quite a big staff now. And again, something that really struck me in the places that I used to work was that, say, the tea room was tiny, or there was just no space at the front reception, or no thought to storage. All these really practical things that then actually impact the receptionists and the lead nurses. They don't necessarily impact the clinician directly, but all the people who make me faster and more efficient and happier in the workplace have previously not really been given a second thought. And patients often comment to them, oh, isn't this place wonderful to work in, and don't you love it? And I can hear them talk about, how much they love coming to work. So I think the people are as important as the place, and that when you have the two sort of meeting in the middle, you have a wonderful staffing team and a wonderful physical space, everything just works. And so the feedback I get is just phenomenal.
And I imagine for a lot of people watching, they're thinking, gosh, I'd love to do that.
Yep.
But that is really, it's a big hill to climb. Am I ready to take on such a big risk?
Indeed.
What would you advise them?
Surround yourself with a good team. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice. I was very fortunate to have Diane Stewart from Avant help me, not only in terms of helping with the finance, but actually giving me business advice. That business planning for me was critical, because a bank won't look at you unless you have a good business plan in place. That's how the whole finance industry works. And I didn't have the first clue about that.
And what's next? Would you do this all again? Would you expand? What are your plans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that first and foremost, it's about making sure that this place is busy and thriving, and we're certainly getting there. We've been open just over a year now, but I would absolutely do it again. I would love to be able to expand the practice as our needs expand, to grow it, to share what I do with more patients, more members of the community.
Well, thank you so much for having us here today. It is an absolutely beautiful space, so enjoy it, and I'm sure your patients will really be all the better for it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming and seeing what we do.
our next episode, we'll get down to business with a gentleman whose key expertise is nurturing other people's practices to success.